Welcome to Startup Stories Podcast.
Well, thank you for joining me again. Speaking with David Raynerson, founder of Warthog USA. David, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for those who don't know you?
Okay, my name is David. I live in South Louisiana, a very southern part of USA, and I'm an importer, and we import a product out of South Africa called Warthog knife sharpeners, and we sell these knife sharpeners. You know, this might sound like an ad, but I think Warthog sharpener is the best knife sharpener in the world. And we sell them to retail stores throughout the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. And it's basically we kind of backed our way into a business like this through our knowledge of retail. We had some retail stores, and so, but we sell the sharpeners to people like hunting stores, fishing stores, hardware, a lot of restaurant supplies. And so it's a mechanical machine that sharpens your knife in just a few moments, a few strokes. So tell everybody, if you can slice a tomato, you can sharpen a knife. But anyway, we have many stores that sell it now. It should be in every home because it's so easy to use. And so it's my wife and I. We have some staff, including a son and a daughter, and a couple of guys that have been with us a long time. We've been doing it about 10 years, and we sell. We travel to some shows. We sell most of buying groups, so it's independent retailers. We support independent retailers in every state. And
fantastic.
It's really an easy sharpener to use, and it's fun. People say, "Oh, you're a great salesman." Well, honestly, it's fun selling the best thing in this category. So we really enjoy our life, based on what we have to do daily, and the way we market it is fun. We're actually on a trip right now. I'm in Phoenix, and beginning a meeting with a group of retailers that starting tomorrow for a few days, and show them our product and sell it to them. So us, along with about 600 other vendors, are going to be in that. So.
Oh, that's fantastic, and it's good. It's a good unit as well. I've seen it in.
Yep, and we actually sell them in England, and so we don't, but we have a contractor there. We have a supplier in England, and so we're sold in a number of countries, but we control North America. Our sales territory is North America.
So how did you get started in this?
Ooh, that's a long story. I'll make it as short as I can. But our background a little bit. My background was I was a machinist originally. I started in a machine shop business, and I was telling my story the other day and how we did that. My daughter said, "Dad, it sounds like you've been working about 120 years. A lot of the times overlap. But I started life as a machinist in the mid-'70s, early '70s actually. And so I was a machinist. I ended up working in the machine shop business about 21 years. And so I have a background in operations and production. And then I wanted to open my own store. So I became a gunsmith as a hobbyist. So I had all the tools. I was actually working as a gunsmith part-time, which that worked us into opening our own retail store, which led to about 3 stores. And we were running our store and a couple others for someone else. And we started buying these knives in South Africa. Well, so I ended up owning part of the company, helping set up a factory in South Africa. So I worked there in South Africa for a few years, and I met these guys that built this knife sharpener there. Some great guys. I tell everybody when I describe these 2 guys that started the Warthog Sharpener Company, and they're in South Africa. I tell them they're godly men with integrity. And so they're great business partners, good people. They're fun to do business with. And they asked if I would sell them here in the States for them. Well, at the time I had the gun shop open and 2 retail stores and the knife company. So I had, it was too much. And so a couple of things happened in our lives. That one of them, we flooded and literally lost everything. And about in 2016. And so when we came out and dug our way out the flood, all we kept was a knife sharpener. So that's kind of the whole story of how it happened. And so now all we do is sell these sharpeners here in the States. We do our own distribution. We have our own sales staff inside, although we have some reps in some states. And it's a fun way to do business. And like I said, especially for an old guy getting a little bit older, it's sometimes we feel like we're on vacation. It's a lot of work, but we try to work a little bit fun into it at the same time.
That's great. So what motivated you to start?
To start the Sharpener company? Well, I saw these guys were selling them in South Africa. They had a dealer who had dabbled in the U.S., but they also had somebody in Europe and someone in Australia was selling it. But I realized the potential because of our background in the retail stores. We were in these buying groups, and it's a group of independent retailers that have joined together, and it's kind of like a co-op. We call it a buying group. But what we would do is we would put together our own shows in this buying group, and it would be like 600 or 800 vendors all set up in one room. So all the stores, in this group, there's probably 350 members, store members, and they represented about 1,200 stores nationwide. And so what a vendor would do is set up at the shows and sell your products to these independent retailers. Great business plan. It worked great for everyone. But I saw the potential for these sharpeners to be sold nationwide. And so what we did was we sold our retail stores and we started this company. And so we sell to about 5 different buying groups now. 2 of them are farm and ranch. But a lot of hardware stores sell it. And our product, you got to show it to sell it. And we knew we could break into the market by doing that. And so we sold everything else we had, started buying some product. We buy it in containers. We have it shipped to the States and then we distribute it. And but the biggest thing that prompted me to do it was I saw the need. I mean, this sharpener is the best sharpener. Anyone can use it. And so I realized we had a market. We developed a plan for it. Matthew, we haven't really wavered from our original plan, although we had many things that made us think we should change it. A lot of distributors wanted to sell it. Of course, everybody in business, no matter if you come up with a good idea, someone else either wants to take it seems like, or tweak it. But we stuck to our original plan, and we feel like we've been very successful with it. We have a lot of room for more growth, but we're growing it anywhere from 12 to 30% a year. So
amazing.
It's good, solid growth, and all of our dealers love what we're doing. They love having a product that you can't buy just anywhere. And we also control the website and Amazon. So that protects our dealers. And so it's a good business plan. It's working well for us, and we're growing about as fast as the factory can make them. So it's working well.
So you mentioned that you had some pressure to make changes. Yeah. What were those, what did those pressures look like?
Well, I mentioned before, it seemed like everybody always, it could be marketing changes. Everybody thinks they can help you and do it better. The distributors all want to take it and run with it. And we had a distributor, but what happens if you have a product and you sell it in the U.S. to distributors, they'll sell it to anybody. And you can't control minimum advertised pricing, which we do have a minimum advertised price. And so that's to protect the dealer. And so they want to take it and run with it. I had a really big distributor I was selling to, but what we found is that within a few weeks after selling to them, everybody in the U.S. all these small stores were selling it, and they were putting it on third-party e-commerce like eBay and Amazon, and they're selling below our agreed-upon minimum advertised pricing. Well, when that happens, the dealers, they don't want to buy it anymore. And so we protect our dealers, and that's how you do it. But there's a lot of ways. I mean, look, advertisers, they think this is the only way you can do it. You should go to this show. You should do that. This type of advertising, they can take your Amazon store and make it 10 times better in 2 weeks. There's all kind of things like that. That's more the pressure. And then also we got pressure from the factory. They want to grow faster. But we had a good, solid plan. And we felt like that plan was what would take this product to to the United States in particular. That's our biggest market. But what happens is everybody wants to grow faster until they start growing, and we are growing. I mean, it was a couple of years we were at 30-35% growth. That's hard to manage that much growth, whether it's sales or production or marketing, any of it. So you have to, we always felt like we had a good plan. We had a couple of setbacks, but it was usually when we wavered from our original plan.
Okay.
Is that the question?
No, that's fantastic. So what happened what were those setbacks and how did they impact you?
Well, the first setback was pretty complicated. Not complicated. It was real simple. It started raining one day. Remember I tell you I live in South Louisiana. Well, we're used to a lot of rain. We get rain, a lot. We can handle 10 inches, in a day. We can handle 10 inches, but we had an event, a rain event happen here in the U.S. in Baton Rouge back in 2016, right after we had started the business. And it rained for about 10 inches for about a week. We had kind of saturated the ground. And like I said, we just started the business. I had a container that I had shipped to a distributor. Back then I used distributors. And he turned it down. Basically, he asked if I could take it back. So I had a container that I had bought for myself. I had his container sitting in the back in the warehouse. And so it rained about 10 inches. And then on Friday, it started raining, and it rained 34 inches, 36 hours. Yeah. And so we can handle a lot of rain. We can't handle that much. Well, by Saturday, it started flooding. And our business, we have a river about 4 miles on one side, and we have another one, small rivers, relatively small, sometimes called creeks, and other one about a mile away. Well, the water started rising in both of those, and the water didn't come from the river. It just came through the woods in front of us, through the forest, and we took on 5 feet of water in our business. And at the time, I still had my gun shop. I still had the gun business, and I was selling it on September the 1st, Matthew, and we flooded on August 13th. I had $1.5 million worth of insurance, but no flood insurance. So we took on 5 feet of water 2 weeks before I sold a 25-year-old business, and I lost everything in the gun shop. You can imagine your office and everything. We'll also imagine a mechanic shop, which we did repairs. We had a retail store. So we lost everything in the store. I lost the sale of the business. Also lost those 2 containers full of knife sharpeners. And I think I mentioned that on a knife company. Well, I had just gotten $103,000 worth of knives 3 days before the flood. They were sitting on the floor about 3 feet high. Well, the water was 5 feet high. And so not only did I lose the business, the sale of the business, because after that I had nothing to sell them. And so we both agreed to cancel the purchase agreement, so we lost the sale of the business. We lost the building, which we rebuilt. I lost everything in all of my inventory. At the time I had about $260,000 just in gun parts. So we did gun repair for about 10 different companies. And then I lost those 2 containers of sharpeners that weren't paid for. Now, I didn't owe on them yet. I had paid for half of one. I didn't owe on the other one. And so we lost everything we owned. I tell everybody, I didn't start back at zero. I was way below zero. And so
what was going through your mind?
It's kind of hard. It's kind of like seeing a fire burn your home up. What goes through somebody's mind then? There was so many thoughts. Number one, are we going to make it? Number two, a lot of the things we had, it didn't belong to me. How am I going to get out of it? I say it didn't belong to me. I didn't pay for it yet. We also had a lot of product in there that belonged to other people that we were repairing. But it was kind of funny. I had a friend who picked me up who now works for us. He was a young man then, drove me in a bay boat, in a 26-foot bay boat, drove us around our office we're driving down the road in a boat and we're running over mailboxes that you couldn't even see. They're under the water. It was really deep, about 6 foot deep in the road. And he told me, he said, Mr. David, your office flooded, didn't you? And I was like, yeah, I knew it was flooded. I had to spend the night in the truck just to get close to it. And so what went through my mind is, what do I do next? That was probably the biggest thought. And so we had to protect the building. And so what we did was the water went down on a Monday. On Sunday, as we were driving around the boat, on Monday morning, we could get back in. Matthew, there was a fish flopping in our retail store. I have no idea how he got in. I guess the water pressure pushed the door open enough. There was a fish flopping in our front, right in front of our gun counter. And everything's covered in mud. Water's still running out. And my wife and I started the business in 94. And we knew we lost the sale level. We knew we lost everything, but we cried for about 20 minutes and we just went to work. We started cleaning stuff up. And of course, I immediately started getting calls from our supplier, the factory, and also from the knife company. So the guys in the knife company, I think they didn't know what to do. They wanted me to send the money. Well, the banks were flooded. It wasn't just us. It was 55,000 homes and businesses flooded. This was in 2016, August 13th. And so what ended up happening, I sold my share of the knife company basically for whatever knives I had left. And the gun shop was gone. It was totally flooded, total loss. I mean, I had machinery, 4 or 5 feet high, and the water was, flooded everything, tools and everything. So the gun shop was gone, had nothing to sell. And we had the knife sharpeners, and we thought we could salvage some of them. And we did maybe, not even 5% of them. But we just started cleaning up. And I know everybody's heard about the floods in North Carolina and the fires in California. I think the federal government, the FEMA, is doing everything they can to help people. Or at least I hope they are. But I can tell you this, I sat in that FEMA tent, not every day. I had too much work to do, but I started working, Matthew. I just worked. Sometimes 10 or 12 at night. You don't expect to lose everything you own at 59 and a half. But, I did what most people my age would do. I just went back to work. And I wasn't ready to retire. I wasn't selling to retire. I was selling everything. Well, I'll tell you the truth. I'm a Christian. And so I had too much to do for a long time. I prayed for about 2.5 years for the Lord to help me simplify my life, and I got simplified real quick. It just started raining one day. And so we prayed for a little bit, we cried, and we went to work. But we ended up selling our share of the knife company, liquidating the gun business, and I had hopes that the government would help us a little bit with the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management. So I went up there a couple of weeks. They had a tent set up in a parking lot. And Louisiana summers in August are terribly hot and terribly humid. So I sat down there. Finally, one of the guys, after about 2 weeks, and I wasn't sitting there all the time. I would go make a visit, go back and work. He pulled me outside the tent. He said, Mr. Reynerson, I want to talk to you. I said, okay. He said, look, I'm just going to be straight with you. You might ought to look for some other forms of help if you've got it available. He said, because I don't think the federal government is going to help a gun shop, because that was the title on our company. And so, Matthew, I realized I didn't like it, but I just went straight back to the office, kept working, and we worked for about 5 years before we caught up. In the meantime, the growth was catching. So that was our biggest setback. Right after we opened the business, about 1.5 years after we opened it. But we caught up with everything, even paid back the factory, everything we owed them and that we think might have cost them interest. And, then we Then the next setback was really the distributors. We had a plan, but we thought the distributors could help us. It didn't work out that way because our product is it's one of those products you got to show it to sell it. You give a demo. Well, to do that, we have to train our dealers to do it. And so by selling to the buy groups, they're independent retailers. They're privately owned, most of them. But it's a different type of, it's small businesses. I mean, still, I don't know the actual numbers, but I still think that 65% of all people in the United States still work in small businesses, family-owned, independent retailers. And so that's what we were. That's what we like. And I think small business is the backbone of America. And so we still sell to that. We still push that. And that's who we like to sell to. And so I think some of our mistakes were trying to go too big, too fast. And in 2019, we realized that we need to refocus again. And so what we did, because some of our dealers, once you go on Amazon and you get some bigger distributors, the independents start backing off because they can't make good profit margins on it. So we refocus. Now we only sell to independent retailers, mostly the buying groups. But we do sell to others that because when we flooded and we lost everything, we rebuilt with a total skeleton structure. And we operate with just a few people, and we would contract out our Amazon. We contract out, accounting. And like we were discussing today, we're working here in a hotel room, and we contract out our sales staff. It just worked. Our computer work. As you know, when I was trying to get on with the screen, I'm not the most computer literate, but for old guys like me, I'm a decent, And so what we did was everything's contracted out, and so it really helps us. We can keep a skeleton crew. We still market to the buying groups mostly, and it's really worked for us. I think not enough people do that. They try to grow too big, too fast, and we're having a solid growth since we made those changes in 2019. We've grown it anywhere. Last year was maybe our worst year, which we saw a lot of changes during the election year. People were scared to buy it first. And so we've grown about 12 to 14% last year. I really don't have all the numbers back from 2024, but from 12 to 35% since 2019. And it's hard to manage growth much bigger than that, at least what we do, because it's still hands-on. You got to show our product to sell it. We got to make sure we put it in the right hands of people at a show.
So I just want to take a quick step back because it's really inspirational, your story. Mm-hmm. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. What you experienced with the flooding and rebuilding from that. How do you think that has changed you as a leader, as a business owner, and you personally? I've
had a lot of people tell me, honestly, asked me a question real similar to that, even this week. Matthew, I think I'm a better man for it. It's easy to, everybody, I always felt like I wanted to be, when I was young, I became a Christian when I was a young man. I always wanted to be a man of integrity. And some of my best friends are just, I think they're the greatest guys in the world. And they're men of integrity. And I always wanted to do that. I don't know if I would describe myself as that now, but I hope I am. I'm still hoping that I'm a man of integrity or become one. But I think it taught me a lot of patience. It taught me, don't give up. I used to have a picture on my wall. It flooded, but it was a picture we live in South Louisiana. We have lots of game and, animals down here and wildlife. And I had a picture of a great blue heron. It's a big bird with a long, long neck and a big, big beak. And they feed on small fish and frogs and stuff like that. Well, I had a picture on my wall, and it was a big blue heron, and he had grabbed a frog in his mouth, and the frog had reached out with his hands and was holding on to that crane's neck. And the caption was, "Never give up," And so the crane had him, but he was going to keep him from swallowing. That's kind of how I felt for many years. But I really think that I'm a better man for it. I don't recommend it as a way to build a business, but But I tell everybody, look, we went through a lot of trials and tribulations, and not just that, but other things within our family. We have 5 children and we have 19 grandchildren, so we're tremendously blessed.
You are blessed.
Yeah, but I tell everybody one way to know that we got through it and we succeeded without our kids still love us and our grandkids still love us, and so that's kind of a measure of the fact that I feel like we did it right. But I never lost sight of what was really important. I knew I couldn't make it on my own. I never felt that God had abandoned us in any way. I always felt like, it could have been different. And, but I don't think I'd be the kind of person I am today if I had to persevere through it. The scripture says that the Lord gives us tribulation so that we can help others. I believe it. But yes, it's changed us in a lot of ways. Number one, I'm a better businessman than I used to be. I've learned to control the finances. Everybody wants, Matthew, prior to opening a gun shop, I ran a machine shop that was it was a $55 million machine shop. In the mid-'80s, that's a pretty big machine shop. We were the largest in the U.S.
Yeah, that's huge.
With the kind of business we had. And I had a lot of employees, and everybody always thinks you want to be big, you want to be famous, or you want to be rich. But in reality, the way I look at it is our businesses we're to serve our community, we're to serve our employees, our families. If a man doesn't take care of his own family, how can he take care of anything else? And so we always looked at it like the most important thing was our family, our business, but not the business because the business is so important. The business is important because of the people you serve. And we love the product. We love the people we sell to. We love the people that buy from us, and everything about the whole industry we like. But the most important thing is serving your community and taking care of products. And so we never lost sight of that. And instead of trying to be big and famous, we just want to keep serving people. Now, honestly, financially, I'm much better off than I ever was when I ran the machine shop or the retail stores. It's changed us in a lot of ways, but I learned not to try to outgrow ourselves. And, we're very content would be the best way to put it.
So content with what you have, where you're at.
Exactly. True happiness is being content, not how much you got, but being content with what you have,
Yeah, that's very good. That's inspirational, really. So you mentioned when you rebuilt lighter and more agile. Could you walk me through and walk everybody through what that looks like or looked like for you?
You mean, well, okay. So the first thing was we realized that because I had 2 containers after that flood. You talking about rebuilt after the flood?
Yes, sir.
We had 2 containers out there, both of them flooded, and I did have another container on the way, but one of those containers was not. I didn't have any intention of ever taking it. The distributor was supposed to have it, so I realized right then that distributor has 5,000 other products he sells. He's not worried about me at all. So we decided to keep it in-house, not use distributors anymore. We also determined because we had lost so much, we had a line of credit, but it wasn't very, very big, and it was, depleted, honestly. I had a retirement from the machine shop business that I had a retirement account. I had to spend it to rebuild the building. And so one of the ways we decided to make it simple is we only sell. For a long time, we only sold to buying groups. Well, the way these buying groups work is you don't have to collect the money. You sell to just say you have a buying group like buying group A, and it consists of, say, 350 stores, hardware, hunting, fishing stores, outdoor stores. Well, you go to the show, they come by, they look at your booth, you look at your wares. Basically, everybody in that room has the authority to write an order for a year. And so basically everybody in there has a checkbook in their pocket. And so we would sell to these buying groups, we'd fill the orders, or we'd write them up. We go back to the office, fill the orders. Well, we didn't have to collect money. And so that's a huge part of a lot of businesses. So from each buying group we sell to now, we get a check once a month, just from the group. The group assures that they don't let any store in that building that doesn't have financial backing from the group. They assure that you're going to get paid. If you write an order, you process that order correctly. It's hard to describe to people that aren't in the industry. In fact, it took me forever, about 3 years, to make the factory even understand who I was selling to. They thought I was selling to a distributor. But that simplified our business so much. We'd ship the product. We'd know in 30 or 60 days, we're getting a check from the group.
That's fantastic.
We also, because we were having a cash flow problem, we flooded. We didn't have any money. And it was getting a cash. So what we did was, one of the groups wanted us to give them some extra terms, or extra discounts, which we give all the buying groups the deepest discount. And so what we did was, okay, how about we give you a 2% 10 terms, net 30 or net 60? Well, the groups themselves pay those terms every time. So now, instead of waiting 30, 60, 90 days to get paid, we're getting paid in 10 days. And so it just worked. They get an extra 2%, but we're getting cash flow now. And so it really worked for us. And so we started offering other groups that. And so that simplified it in some ways. We had a cash flow. We didn't have to call and say, hey, when are you going to pay us? So we don't have a collection group. We don't have, my wife, Lydia, does the accounting, but she didn't have to worry about whether we got paid or not. It showed up in our bank account every month. And so it was really, that simplified a lot. And then we also hired sales reps throughout the U.S. And the sales reps, what they do is they call on your customers. You give them a list of your customers. Hopefully they have new customers and open up new stores. It didn't necessarily work out so great for us. We have one group in the Talos states, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, 4 states. Those guys, when we hired them, the first group, we had 36 dealers in Texas. Within 1 year, I had 96 dealers. Now I have over 210 dealers just in Texas. That's not counting the other 4 states. So that group worked out really well. And they get paid a percentage of our sales, but we didn't have to hire inside sales force. And
right.
So a lot of ways you can simplify. And of course, we also keep our product line very simple. Again, we're doing it because we want to survive, but we also have a very simple product. And we keep our product simple. We keep our sales line simple. We don't try to, and then we keep it simple for the factory. We sell about 70% of everything the factory makes here in the States.
That's amazing.
And then there's other ways you can simplify. Our marketing. We do all our marketing in-house now, but I struggled, Matthew, for marketing. I've been in the retail business since the early 90s. And I always felt like I did what everybody told me to do. That your ad agency tells you to do this, and and you put these ads in the paper. Of course, that no longer exists anymore, really. But market has changed so much in the last 30 years. But everybody has an idea.
Sorry, you shared with me a book that inspired you around marketing.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit about that and how that's changed how you do your marketing?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting to. We tried for so many years, and I felt like I was doing what everybody told me I should do. All the marketing gurus, but again, people everybody wants a piece of you. They send you, I can guarantee I can increase it, and it still happens every day, but I never felt like I had a real grip on how to do marketing. What's your real message? I know we had the best sharpener in the world, and once you show it to somebody, it's easy to sell. But I finally read a book, and I was about 3 paragraphs into the book, and I realized This is exactly what I've been looking for. And so that book is, I guess you don't mind me calling it, but the book is Story Brand. And it's Building Your Story Brand. It's by Donald Miller. It totally changed the way I looked at marketing, but it also simplified everything because I thought, man, this is it. And honestly, there's anybody who might be listening or wants to listen, they probably can tell you that I don't know what I'm talking about, but I know this, that method of marketing totally worked for us. It was a way that we could simplify what we're doing, simplify the message we're giving to our customer. The results prove themselves, 30 to 35% growth the first two years we did it. It dropped a little bit the last 2 years. We went from 18 and 13, but we think the market with the election year in the U.S., I mean, our phone started ringing the day after the election, November the 6th, but it seemed like everybody was holding their money, but we never thought we were doing anything wrong, but Story Brand has totally changed the way we approach marketing, and it made it simple, simplified our message so that not only can our customer understand it, but everybody in our sales force, from our lowest level employee to the top, we all understand the same thing, and it worked for us.
That's fantastic. So what elements of it did you implement it? Could you walk me through how you implemented it into your business? I love the book. I've read it as well. And I implemented quite a bit of it for myself.
Well, so I'm going to tell you what I think, but it's been about 2 years, so you're not going to pick me up. No, I'm just kidding. First I read the book and then I read it again, taking notes. Okay. And look, Donald Miller is, he's a great businessman, he has great ideas. And I'm sure that since that book, he's gotten more, but it works for us. We may take it further some other time, but right now we're still happy with it. And we're busy running our business, not trying to redevelop another business plan. But first thing they say is, I read the book, then I read through it again and what I typically do when I get a really good book that I like, I'll read through it with note cards or something so that I can take notes. I read through it again with the idea of implementing a plan for our customer and developing our own storyline. What are we going to tell the customer and how do we represent our product to the customer in our company? And what I learned in Story Brand is that the hero is the customer. You learn how to take your product and make the customer successful with it and why they need that to be successful. Well, it was kind of easy for us because I tell everybody there's only 3% of people in this world can sharpen a knife. All 3% are butchers because almost nobody else can do it. But look, I was a machinist. I used to own part of a knife company. I built knives and sharpened knives all my life. But honestly, without this sharpener, I can't do it perfect every time. So it's an easy product to sell because it works. It's just a simple machine. But we tried to develop a plan that would, as I read through the book, I developed a plan that would allow us to put a message forth to the customer. But I also, in that plan, I wrote an outline for our company. And I used that outline as a training for our other employees, which it was a skeleton crew. It was only 3 of us at the time. But I still took a month, Matthew, to train those other 2 guys. Not just to train them, it was training me too. I didn't have anything set in my mind when I started developing the Story Brand for our company. And I purposely wouldn't allow myself to go there. And so about 3 times a week, we would meet. And the other 2 people are great. They're very intelligent. I couldn't do their job. And so, and Lydia and Brian, they're great. They're just tremendous staff to have, but they also have great ideas. And so what I did was I took a big whiteboard and I set it up there and we start, okay, so what should we present to the customer? What is our one-liner for our company? I went through the whole book. Just the book literally outlined it perfect. So all we had to do was fill in the blanks. I had to create an outline for the 7 steps of creating a story brand. And they call it the SB7 in the book. And so I created that, but I refuse to fill in the blanks. And when we're having our meetings, it lasts about an hour a day for 3 days a week. And so as we're having our meetings, I refuse to prompt them too much, except for, no, let's have another answer. Let's keep looking at this until every one of us would agree what went in that blank. And then we go to the next one, what goes in this blank. And some of the ideas were exactly the same as mine because they have the same experience, but some of them were totally different. And it was a great learning experience. And so now when we add a staff member, we go through the same thing again, making sure that they understand exactly where we went. And if you read the book Story Brand, it outlines, we did exactly what they say you should do. And then the next step was, there was two things I saw. Number one, you had to develop the SB7 plan. That was what stuck in my mind. But number two is emails. Your email list and your customer list is the most important thing you have. Well, the customer list is the most important thing. But if you can't reach them, it's like having a blank piece of paper. And so they really emphasize in the book emails, and I'm sure there's other ways to do it. But for us, our customers love our product and they want to rebuy. And so they answer our emails. And so I never had to go too much farther than that, Matthew, because, we did. We still incorporated. So what we did after about a year and a half later, we hired a marketing director and he does all our emails. And so for a little while, we knew that we had to go a step further, but when you're growing at 30% a year, it's hard to sit back and develop a plan too. And so it wasn't until we actually had another guy working for us, and his name is Nathan. Nathan is my son, and he has a degree in marketing, but he's also has a lot of other interests, and he had never actually used his degree in marketing except for his own business. And you met Nathan. And
yeah, he's a great guy.
It just flat out, everything has fallen into place, but we're not doing anything special other than what Story Brand book told us to do, building a story brand as a book. And in fact, when I saw you late January, I had the book with me. I still got the book with me. I'm on my third or fourth trip since I saw you. And I like to keep it with me because I reread it. And like I said, I'm sure that now the company has better resources, but until this one slows down, I'm happy we continue to develop our marketing plan through that. But Story Brand totally changed how we approach our customer. It's never about the company, which any business is never about the company. It's about how can you help your customer or your community.
That's right.
And we always looked at our business as a ministry, even in the gun shop. And, you're trying to serve your community. You're trying to become a part of the community. And if money is your goal, if that's all you're trying to do is make money or be rich or gain, even when you get it, you're not going to be fulfilled. We've always looked at it as being part of our community, loving people, showing respect to people, and building relationships. And yeah, we get paid for what we do, but so does everybody else. And so we're just trying to, I think Story Brand really helped us give a good direction in that.
That's awesome. So here's one question. If you had one piece of advice that you wish you had early on in your career, what would that be?
That's a really good question because it's so complicated in business. I wish I was reading, there's a book of Proverbs that I read from, and it talks about the book of Proverbs. There's only 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs, but it says that these Proverbs will help you to learn to be wise, to accept correction, and to understand wise sayings. And they'll teach you to develop your mind the right way. You'll learn to do what's right and to be honest and fair. And it says these Proverbs will make even those without education smart, and they'll teach you what you need to know. And then the end of that, that's the first chapter. And it says you can don't fill your life with just what you want. And and don't refuse to follow wisdom. And I guess if I'd have looked at it so many times, Matthew, in my life, I tried to, follow the dollar, figure out what everybody wanted, I wish I'd have known to just be content and solid and steady and not try to go too fast in business. And I don't know if that's kind of what you're looking for, but I never had very many mentors in business. It seemed like more people just wanted to, and I don't know if it's something my persona portrays or not, but it seemed like I had a lot of people wanted to take what we had or use us. And I didn't learn to recognize that early enough. I wish I'd recognized it sooner. And, but I guess I wish I'd have been more content with what we had and just serving and not try to strive for too much more. I think in the end, if you're solid, you have a good game plan and you try to have integrity, do what's right for your family and your community, I think you're going to win. And I don't know. It's been quite a journey. We have so many friends and family that have helped us over the years, but I'll have to say that we're very content and almost no regrets. But we've had a great life just serving the community in the way that we've done it.
That's really amazing. Your story, I mean, the second time hearing it, I'm still finding it inspirational. So I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time as well. It's been a fantastic hearing everything, and I'm glad we could connect again so all the listeners can hear your story again. I will just give a little bit of a plug. These knife sharpeners, they are incredible. I've seen them in person. They're pretty cool. And so if you're in the U.S., look them up. And you said they're import to the U.K. as well. Who are they imported through?
I'm not sure who the distributor in the U.K. is, but we have someone in Germany, New Zealand, Australia, South America. And if you look up Warthog Warthog Sharpeners, South Africa, you'll find the distributor for each country. And so they'll have the ones listed. I'm not sure if the guy in Germany does all of the UK, all of Europe, but I think there's also someone in the UK. But it's so easy to use. And look, I tell everybody it belongs in every home because if you cook, if you hunt, fish, camp, you got to have a sharp knife. And so anyway, it's fun selling the best thing in this category.
And that's great. And your story is inspirational as well. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.